Welcome back to Talk of the Town, and I'm joined now by Phil Anderson for U.S. Senate, and we are talking about party politics today. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Ellen.
Now, I want to hear your opinion on, is there a problem with the two-party politics?
There's two huge problems, I would say, and they're both a grave disservice to the American people. Number one, having two parties dominate the political landscape enables big moneyed interests, like big industries, big lobbies, big unions, what have you, to basically contribute to both sides, both of those parties, and thereby control the candidates or the money flowing into those campaigns, which, as we know, is very important in terms for running for office. You'd have raise money in order to spend money on media and things like that.
Sure.
The other disservice it does is that there can be a very small distance between the positions of those two parties, and they can still appeal to different sides of an issue. So while the political spectrum might be 100 yards long, all one party needs to be is 1 inch to the left or right of the other and still capture all those votes while not necessarily representing the actual opinions of the people that they're supposed to be representing. So it skews the idea of representative government in a very negative way for most Americans.
Now, two follow-up questions for that. Do you think there is corruption then in two-party politics, and how has it affected the electoral process?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think everyone agrees that there's a lot of money flowing into politics. Some people think that's a good idea and it's an expression of free speech. But in the case of being only a two-party system, as I said, it skews what is said to the people, and then the difference between what is said to people by candidates when they're running and when they're actually serving in office is pretty drastic in some cases. As I mentioned, the distance between two candidates or two parties can be very small on a very important issue. It might be whether we should be at war in the Middle East or a particular party's position on abortion. And as long as they're to one side, they can represent that or at least get the anti-other side vote, which we see a lot in this presidential election process, and never Hillary, never Trump, whatever. You know, Hillary and Trump get votes just by virtue of the fact that they're just slightly different from the other party. And that's not really representative. There's not really an opportunity for people's real views to be presented at the table in representative politics.
Now, that being said, do you think your opponents are involved in that corruption?
Oh, totally, totally. And not to apologize for them necessarily, but they have to run because they are basically handcuffed to their parties and to the process of raising money. They have to run in a way that brings money into the campaign. So, for example, Russ Feingold, who originally was sort of an anti-war, working for the little guy kind of candidate, is not talking about issues like being anti-war now. He's actually running commercials about what should be done offensively in the Middle East. And he doesn't talk about another issue, for example, that his constituents back up, and that is legalizing marijuana. He doesn't talk about that at all because there are powerful industrial interests that don't want it legalized. Big pharmaceutical, big energy, the medical industry don't want that legalized because they don't have control over it. So he doesn't talk about those things. He would be free to if he wasn't tied to the money. Ron Johnson has the same set of problems in terms of his relationship to his party and being handcuffed to them and what they want to do and how they want to raise money.
So how is the Libertarian Party different?
Well, the Libertarian Party is, first of all, just being a third party provides a completely different perspective. And when there's at least three parties in a political system, then it's not nearly as easy for any particular industry or big moneyed interest to dominate the conversation and to pre-select candidates. Also, once there's a third party, now you've got three dimensions politically, and you can see that if Republicans and Democrats are only an inch apart on some issue, and the Libertarians are over here, or the Greens are over here, or whoever, now you've actually got perspective on the positions of those parties, and also a chance for better representation. If a particular issue is important to a voter, like the most important issue, you could find a candidate that's their most important issue too, and they can represent you. That's not the case in two-party politics.
Now, what do you personally pledge to do before we go here?
Well, first of all, as a libertarian, I'm against money in politics, and I want to reduce the size and scope of the federal government basically to nothing, so that is not a good investment for big donors and big political interests to make. Also, I pledge to be transparent. As everyone knows, I favor the Read the Bills Act and the One Subject at a Time Act, which would create a lot more transparency in representative politics. And I've also pledged to be in contact with my constituents every single day, just like Representative Justin Amash, a Republican from Grand Rapids, does, so that everyone knows how I'm voting and why. So it's not a question of making votes on hidden issues, hidden bills, things that are all tied together, and then trying to spin them later to get reelected. I'll have a solid record, a daily record of everything I'm doing and why. And that's what the people of Wisconsin deserve in representation. They deserve better than Democrats and Republicans as usual.
Bill Anderson for U.S. Senate, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you.
And Talk of the Town will be back with more right after this.